some mojo back yesterday playing the Lions. And Ezekiel Elliott, the story in this one, carried the ball 25 times, gained 240 total yards, scoring once. Most importantly, had a 34-yard catch to set up this, the game-winning field goal. Dak was happy. Cowboys win it 26-24. Dak threw for 255 yards, 2 touchdowns, as the Cowboys now sit at 2-2. Here's Ezekiel Elliott discussing that pivotal catch after the game.
Honestly, I've been trying to get that play for a while. We ran a couple of times in practice and it's hit, but once I saw we got in the 2-minute offense and they were playing man-to-man, they had a linebacker lined up on me in the slot, I just knew, I was telling the guys on sideline, give me the inside fade.
And you've got Zeke on a linebacker. We're going to take that matchup any day of the week. Doesn't matter who the linebacker is.
That catch over his shoulder, when it all counted, should be one we all remember. And I'm glad I got to see it. But I've never seen him play any better than he played today.
2-2 is much better than 1-3, and it was great for us just to come out here, get things going offensively, and just be able to go down there and win that game on that last drive. It's big for everybody's confidence and just moving forward and momentum that we can take from this game and carry on.
Coach, did the Cowboys finally realize what it seemed like we all realized earlier, that the key to success is going to be just running the ball and getting Zeke more carries than not?
Yeah, you look at some of their early games, and they were in a significant amount of empty, where now Zeke really isn't a threat at all, and they don't have to worry about the running game. You're thinking, what's the benefit of doing this? And by putting him in the backfield, in committing to running the ball the way that they did, everybody's going to have to load up the box. And it's not like this is some big secret that you have to load up the box against Zeke, but for them to commit to it was a step in the right direction. And then the zone runs, or the run-pass options, I think those are important too, to keep incorporating and try to take advantage of not only him as a threat as a runner, but also Dak as a threat as a runner too, and try to open up some things, because they've got to generate ways to get the outside guys open. And the best way to do that is to get everybody to commit to the coverage on the interior part, the running game between Zeke and Dak.
During the break, Coach, we were talking about your son's football teams and your junior high, and they played a team that had one guy that was clearly bigger and better than everybody, and that team just kept giving him the ball. Like, this is a tale as old as sports. Give your best player the ball as often as possible until the other team can stop it, and then go to your counterpunch. Don't go to your counterpunch ahead of time. And the Cowboys had been counterpunching instead of punching weeks 1 through 3. Zeke's carries 17, 15, 16. That was egregious coaching to go along with their quarterback struggling as much as he'd struggled as a pro. Yesterday, they give the ball to Zeke 25 times on the ground, and not shockingly, Dak has his best day through the air that we've seen from him in, 2 months worth of football. This is the Cowboys' formula to success. Now, you can make the argument that it should be concerning that Zeke had the best game statistically of his career and they needed a field goal at the gun to win it, but the Cowboys at this point will take a win by any means necessary, and having Zeke be your bell cow is obviously what they need to do. It's going into the year. The reason we thought he could approach 2,000 yards was partially, CC, because he's special, but partially because we thought they were going to have no other choice but to run him close to 400 times.
They don't have any other choice, and they didn't run him.
Right, the first 3 weeks. But yesterday, 150 on the ground, almost 90 in the air. I mean, that's a great game, and that's why the Cowboys won.
He had a great game, but I still think Dallas has 2 problems. One being they're not going to believe in the identity of what happened last night. Like, are they going to grow that offense? Because with him being successful in the passing game, they had the big screen earlier, then you had the fade from the slot. How else do they grow his game, passing-wise? We know they got to run the ball, but where else? Is Scott Linehan going to come up with 5 or 6 different formations where you can throw the ball to Zeke? I don't think so. I mean, this same Cowboys, I believe next week we'll go back. Zeke will have 15 to 18 rushes, a couple throws out of the backfield, because this is how they play. And they're going to struggle to be able to win games. Zeke is as good as he was in the passing game. 4 times targeted, 4 catches, 88 yards. He's their leading receiver.
Yeah.
Who else you going to beat on a given day where he's your leading receiver? Now, I believe in getting him the football. He needs 28 touches a game. But you still have a problem from a lack of wide receiver in this win. If we're just looking at it honestly, did Dallas figure something out? To me, No. Because even with his best game ever, they struggled and still should have lost this game.
Just real quick, let me ask you this, C, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Coach. From a passing perspective, I did think schematically they were taking more shots downfield, which is what we talked about last week, that they have to take, you said it, eight in the game, 2 a quarter essentially, where you give yourself a chance for chunk plays. And they did that in this week's game more than they had done it in those 3 weeks. Now, it didn't change who's catching the ball on the other end of it, but I thought that gave them a better chance to move
Conceptually, they changed just a little bit. But from a talent standpoint, it's still the same guys. They do not have a bunch of playmakers. I'm very disappointed in Hearns. His inability to get separation week in and week out just has not been there. Cole Beasley in the slot, like he provided them just a little bit of a lift, but every week, like Cole Beasley's going to be my #1 guy. Like, so we're going to have problems.
One of the things that I do like about taking a shot is when you're loading up the box, when you are committed to the running game and people have to come up there. And we saw it, we've seen it over time with great running backs. That does open up those opportunities to throw it down the field. But again, you need to be committed. If Chris, you were talking about 2 a quarter, you need to do that. You need to get the defense to think, okay, the safeties can't keep creeping up. Everybody can't keep creeping up because you only need to hit 1 or 2 of those a game, and suddenly
which they did.
Which they did.
To Zeke.
And so then now defensively you think, okay, do I really want to commit to this down in and down out of loading up the box, of moving everybody up, because then you get hit with those home run balls. It will be interesting to see what type of lessons they pull from this game. What do we see moving forward? Is this something they go back and they watch the tape and say it's an aberration, or do they go back and say, okay, this is who we need to be moving forward?
We were all down on Dak last week. A lot of fans had a hard time with just the way Dak's been playing. Do you feel any better about what you saw yesterday?
You have to give... Wait. First of all, these guys play how they play. It ain't our fault. It's our job to critique how they're playing. So Dak, like, if you're going to be a franchise quarterback, you're not supposed to be a roller coaster ride. It's supposed to be some smooth sailing. Or even when you dip, your dips are not so low. So how they play... Listen, it's not up for us to be, hey, man, they have to play better. Dak's got to play better. You saw his enthusiasm at the end. Man, he needed this. He was feeling the pressure. So it's not the outside. Dak knows he's got to play better. Nick and I, our commentary is not going to change.
And see, if Dak was a roller coaster, the last 5 weeks, he was the most boring roller coaster ever because there weren't any dips. It was just long, flat at the bottom. It was 5 straight games under 200 yards passing. So how do I feel? What I think is this. Dak had his best game he's had this season and one of the best games he's had since Zeke's suspension last season. Now, 255 yards passing and 17 completions would not be many guys' best game in a month, but it was for Dak. And so that is the type of stat line you want to see from him.
They still barely won.
Absolutely, but the defense needs...
Yeah.
I anticipate the defense playing better typically. I think they got pressure on Stafford like 8% of his throws. He had a clean pocket the whole game, it felt like.
Yeah, DeMarcus Lawrence, he had a good
DeMarcus Lawrence was the only guy. I think he had 3 sacks, and I think those were almost the entirety of the pressures the Cowboys had the entire game. Point I'm making is less than 30 attempts, 220 to 260 yards passing. That's about what you should expect from a above average NFL quarterback. So all I've been saying is, can Dak be above average? Because we were talking about his stat line looked like Brock Osweiler's over his last 13 games. And that's a discussion you never want to be in. And it also, of course, helps when your best player has his best career day.
And they're going to have that discussion. Effective. You need your quarterback, especially a guy like him who should be emerging each year. You need to get some sort of significant production, some sort of significant growth before you commit to him long term. Otherwise,
it's your term, coach. You need your quarterback to be a force multiplier,
without a doubt. Or you also need to see growth. If he's not a force multiplier now, and maybe he's taking a step back, and sometimes young quarterbacks do that, you need to see some growth after they take that step back, and I don't know if we've seen very much of that.
All right, we got to take a break. Coming up, can Mitch Trubisky make the Bears the best team in the NFC? Yes, we said that. Next up, first things first.
He showed some growth yesterday. Mitch Trubisky.
Trubisky, a lot of good.